Ever tried growing an avocado from a pit, only to end up with a tall, spindly stick that never produces a single fruit? You are not alone. That pit in a glass method is fun to watch, but it rarely gives you actual avocados. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the complete process of growing avocados in containers, from choosing the right variety all the way through to harvesting your own homegrown fruit. Plus, stick around to the end where I will share a simple trick for getting your tree to produce fruit years earlier than most people expect. Let's get started. Avocados are one of the most rewarding trees you can grow in a container. And here is the good news. With the right approach, you can harvest your own creamy avocados even if you live in a cold climate or only have a small patio to work with. Once you understand which varieties work best and follow the right steps, you will be picking avocados from your own tree before you know it. So let's start by understanding what makes container growing different. Now, before we get into the planting process, you need to understand something important. Not all avocado trees are created equal when it comes to container growing. If you plant a standard avocado tree in a pot, you are going to end up with a tree that wants to be 30 feet tall, fighting against a container that cannot support it. That is a battle you will not win. What you want are dwarf or semi-dwarf varieties that have been grafted onto rootstock, specifically designed to keep them compact. These trees typically max out at 8 to 10 feet tall, which is completely manageable in a container, especially if you do some pruning, which I will show you later. Let me give you some specific varieties to look for. Wurtz, sometimes called Little Cado, is probably the most popular dwarf variety out there. It stays naturally small, produces excellent fruit, and does very well in containers. Holiday is another great choice. It is a semi-dwarf that produces beautiful green-skinned avocados and handles container life really well. Lamb-Hass is a bit larger, but still manageable if you keep up with pruning, and it produces those dark, pebbly-skinned avocados most people recognize from the grocery store. Gwen is another semi-dwarf worth considering. It produces fruit similar to Hass, but on a more compact tree. Now here is something important. You want to buy a grafted tree, not grow one from seed. I know growing from a pit is tempting, but seed-grown avocados can take 10 to 15 years to produce fruit, and even then there is no guarantee the fruit will taste good. A grafted tree from a reputable nursery will typically start producing fruit in 3 to 4 years, sometimes sooner. That is a huge difference. Look for trees that are at least 2 to 3 feet tall when you buy them. They establish faster and give you a head start. Now that you know what kind of tree to get, let's talk about setting up the perfect home for it. Container. Selection is critical with avocados because these trees hate having wet feet. If the roots sit in soggy soil, they will develop root rot faster than almost any other fruit tree I have grown. Start with a container that is about 15 to 20 gallons for a young tree. That translates to roughly 18 to 20 inches across and equally deep. You can start smaller with a 10-gallon pot if your tree is very young, but you will need to pot up within a year or two. I personally like to start with a 15-gallon container and save myself the extra transplanting step. The material matters too. I have had the best luck with plastic or resin containers because they are lightweight, which is important when you need to move the tree indoors for winter. Terracotta looks beautiful, but it dries out faster and gets incredibly heavy. Smart pots or fabric containers work wonderfully for avocados because they provide excellent drainage and air pruning for the roots. But they do dry out quicker, so you will need to water more frequently. Whatever container you choose, drainage holes are absolutely non-negotiable. I am talking multiple holes in the bottom, not just one small one in the center. If your container only has one drainage hole, drill a few more. Trust me on this. Now for the soil mixture, and this is where a lot of people go wrong. Avocados need soil that drains extremely fast, but still holds some moisture and nutrients. Do not just use regular potting soil straight from the bag. It holds too much water and will suffocate those sensitive roots. Here is the mixture I use. About 50% high-quality potting mix, 30% perlite for drainage, and 20% compost for nutrients. Some growers add in some coarse sand or bark chips as well. The goal is a loose, airy mixture that water flows through easily. When you water your avocado, you should see water coming out the drainage holes within seconds. If it pools on the surface or takes a long time to drain through, your mix is too heavy. Fill your container with this mixture, leaving about 2 inches of space from the rim. This gives you room to water without overflow making a mess everywhere. All right, now comes the exciting part. Let's get this tree planted. When you bring your grafted avocado tree home, you will probably notice a bump or slight bend low on the trunk. That is the graft union where the fruiting variety was attached to the rootstock. This is important to identify because you never want to bury that graft union below the soil line. Before planting, water your tree thoroughly in its nursery pot. This helps the root ball hold together and reduces transplant shock. Let it sit for about 30 minutes so the water fully penetrates. Dig out a hole in your prepared container that is roughly the same depth as the nursery pot and about twice as wide. You want the top of the root ball to sit level with, or just slightly above the surrounding soil surface. Avocados are sensitive to being planted too deep. If you bury the trunk, you are asking for collar rot. Gently remove the tree from its nursery pot. If the roots are circling around the outside of the root ball, use your fingers to gently loosen them and encourage them to grow outward. Do not be afraid to rough them up a little. It actually helps them establish in their new home. Set the tree in the hole and backfill with your soil mixture. Firm it down gently with your hands, but do not pack it tight. You want good soil-to-root contact without compacting everything into a brick. After planting, water deeply until you see it flowing freely from the drainage holes. This settles the soil around the roots and eliminates air pockets. Add a thin layer of mulch on top, maybe an inch or two of wood chips, keeping it a few inches away from the trunk itself. This helps retain moisture without encouraging trunk rot. If you are finding this helpful so far, take a second to subscribe so you do not miss future videos like this one. Now let's keep going. With your tree planted, watering becomes your most important ongoing task. And I will be honest with you, avocado watering is a bit of a balancing act. These trees need consistent moisture, but absolutely cannot tolerate soggy soil. Too much water and the roots rot. Too little and the leaves turn brown and crispy. Finding that sweet spot takes a little attention, but once you get a feel for it, it becomes second nature. Here is how I approach it. Stick your finger about 2 inches into the soil. If it feels dry at that depth, it is time to water. If it still feels moist, wait another day or two and check again. In the heat of summer, you might be watering every 2 to 3 days. In cooler weather or winter, it might stretch to once a week or even less. The key is checking rather than watering on a fixed schedule. When you do water, water deeply. I mean really soak it until water pours out the drainage holes. This encourages roots to grow deep into the container rather than staying shallow near the surface. Shallow watering leads to shallow roots, which makes for a weaker tree. After watering, never let the pot sit in a saucer full of water. Empty that saucer within 30 minutes, or elevate your container on pot feet so it drains freely. Now let's talk about feeding, because avocados in containers are entirely dependent on you for nutrition. Unlike trees in the ground that can send roots out searching for nutrients, container trees only have access to what is in that pot. I feed my container avocados with a balanced citrus and avocado fertilizer every 4 to 6 weeks during the growing season, which runs from early spring through early fall. Look for a fertilizer specifically formulated for citrus and avocado trees. These typically have the right balance of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, plus the micronutrients avocados need like zinc and iron. Follow the package directions for container plants, and honestly, I usually go a little lighter than recommended. It is easy to over-fertilize in containers. and too much fertilizer can burn the roots and damage your tree. A little less is safer than a little more. During winter, when the tree slows its growth, stop fertilizing entirely. The tree is not actively growing and does not need the extra nutrients. Resume feeding when you see new growth emerging in spring. One more thing on feeding. Every year or two, you will want to refresh the top few inches of soil in your container. Nutrients get depleted and the soil structure breaks down over time. Scrape out the top 2 to 3 inches of old soil and replace it with fresh potting mix and compost. This gives your tree a nutrient boost without the stress of full repotting. Now that we have covered watering and feeding, let's talk about where to actually put this tree. Avocados need a lot of light to produce fruit. We are talking at least 6 hours of direct sunlight per day, and honestly, 8 or more is even better. In most climates, a south-facing location is ideal. If you are growing on a patio or balcony, find the sunniest spot available. That said, avocados can suffer in extreme heat. If you live somewhere where summer temperatures regularly climb above 95 degrees Fahrenheit, your tree may appreciate some afternoon shade during the hottest months. Full morning sun with protection from the brutal afternoon heat works well in desert climates or the deep south. Here is where container growing gives you a huge advantage. You can move the tree. If you notice the leaves looking scorched or wilted during a heat wave, you can simply roll it to a shadier spot for a few days. Try doing that with a tree planted in the ground. Temperature is the other critical factor, and this is where avocados get tricky for a lot of gardeners. Avocados are tropical and subtropical trees. They thrive in temperatures between 60 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Most varieties can handle brief dips into the low 30s, but anything below about 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit for an extended period will cause serious damage or kill the tree entirely. If you live in zones 9 through 11, you can probably keep your container avocado outdoors year-round, with maybe some frost protection on the coldest nights. In zones 8 and below, you are going to need to bring that tree indoors for winter. This is another reason why lightweight containers and manageable tree sizes matter so much. When you bring your avocado inside for winter, find the brightest spot in your house. A south-facing window is ideal, but honestly, most indoor locations do not provide enough light for an avocado to truly thrive. The tree will survive, but it will likely drop some leaves and look a bit sad. A grow light can make a huge difference if you are serious about keeping your tree healthy through winter. Indoor air is also much drier than outdoor air, especially with heating running. Your avocado will appreciate occasional misting or a pebble tray filled with water beneath the pot to boost humidity around the leaves. Move the tree back outdoors once nighttime temperatures stay consistently above 50 degrees Fahrenheit in spring. Do this gradually over a week or two, giving the tree time to adjust to the brighter outdoor light. A sudden move from dim indoor conditions to full outdoor sun can shock the leaves and cause sunburn. Now let's talk about pruning, because this is one of the most important skills for keeping an avocado happy in a container. In the ground, an avocado tree can grow 30 feet tall or more. In a container, you simply cannot support that kind of growth. Pruning keeps your tree compact, manageable, and actually more productive. The best time to do major pruning is in late winter or early spring, just before the new growth flush begins. This gives the tree the whole growing season to recover and fill back in. Here is my approach. First, remove any dead, damaged, or crossing branches. These are taking energy from the tree without contributing anything useful. Next, look at the overall shape. You want an open, vase-like structure that allows light and air to penetrate into the center of the canopy. If the interior is a dense tangle of branches, thin some of them out. To control height, cut back the main leader and any branches that are getting too tall. Make your cuts just above a node or a side branch. This encourages the tree to branch out rather than shooting straight up. I typically keep my container avocados around 6 to 8 feet tall, which I can still reach for harvesting. Do not be afraid to prune. I know it feels wrong to cut off healthy growth, but avocados respond really well to pruning. They will push out new growth quickly and become bushier and more compact as a result. A well-pruned container avocado looks beautiful and produces more accessible fruit than a lanky, unpruned tree ever will. One thing to avoid is heavy pruning in fall or early winter. You do not want to stimulate a bunch of tender new growth right before cold weather arrives. Save the major cuts for spring. Throughout the growing season, you can do light maintenance pruning anytime. Pinch back the tips of vigorous shoots to encourage branching. Remove any suckers that sprout from below the graft union, as these are from the rootstock and will not produce good fruit. Now here is the question everyone asks. How do I actually get fruit? This is where understanding avocado pollination becomes important. Avocado flowers are a bit unusual. Each flower has both male and female parts, but they do not function at the same time. The flowers open twice. The first time they open as female and can receive pollen. They close overnight, then open again the next day as male and release pollen. The timing of these phases varies depending on whether your tree is a Type A or Type B variety. Type A varieties, like Hass and Gwen, have female flowers open in the morning and male flowers open in the afternoon of the following day. Type B varieties, like Fuerte and Sultano, do the opposite. Male flowers in the morning, female in the afternoon. The reason this matters is cross-pollination. If you have both a Type A and Type B tree, their flowering schedules overlap in a way that dramatically improves pollination and fruit set. A single tree can produce fruit on its own through self-pollination, and plenty of people get avocados from a single tree. But having both types significantly increases your chances of a good harvest. If you only have room for one container tree, do not let this discourage you. Pick a variety known for being a good self-pollinator, keep it healthy, and you will likely get fruit. But if you have space for two containers, choosing one Type A and one Type B is a smart strategy. Bees are your friends here. If your trees are outdoors during bloom, bees will do the pollination work for you. If you are blooming indoors, you can hand-pollinate by using a small paintbrush to transfer pollen from the male flowers to the female flowers. Let's talk about some common problems you might run into and how to solve them. First, brown crispy leaf edges. This is one of the most common issues with container avocados, and it usually comes down to one of two things: either inconsistent watering or salt buildup in the soil. If you have been letting the soil dry out too much between waterings, that will cause tip burn. The fix is more consistent moisture monitoring. If you have been watering regularly, the problem might be salts accumulating from fertilizer or hard tap water. Flush the container thoroughly every few months by running water through it for several minutes. This leaches out excess salts. You can also switch to filtered water or rainwater if your tap water is particularly hard. Second, yellowing leaves. If the older lower leaves are turning yellow and dropping, that is usually a nitrogen deficiency. Your tree is hungry. Step up your fertilizing schedule or switch to a fertilizer with higher nitrogen content. If the yellowing is between the veins while the veins stay green, that points to an iron or zinc deficiency. Look for a fertilizer with micronutrients or apply a foliar spray specifically for iron chlorosis. Third, leaf drop. Some leaf drop is normal, especially when you bring a tree indoors for winter or move it to a new location. The tree is adjusting. But excessive leaf drop usually indicates stress from overwatering, underwatering, cold damage, or root problems. Check your watering habits first. Stick your finger in the soil. If it is soggy, back off and let it dry out more between waterings. If the roots have been sitting in wet soil for too long, you may be dealing with root rot, which brings me to the next problem. Fourth, root rot. This is the big one, and it kills more container avocados than anything else. The symptoms are wilting leaves that do not perk up after watering, general decline, and if you unpot the tree, brown mushy roots instead of healthy white ones. Prevention is the best medicine here. Use fast-draining soil, Never let the pot sit in water, and make sure your container has excellent drainage. If you catch root rot early, you can unpot the tree, trim away the damaged roots, let them dry for a day, and repot in fresh, dry soil mix. But honestly, severe root rot is often fatal. Fifth, no fruit after several years. If your tree is healthy and mature, but not setting fruit, pollination is likely the issue. Consider adding a second tree of the opposite type. Also, make sure your tree is getting enough light. Avocados need abundant sunshine to produce fruit. A tree surviving in a shady corner might never fruit no matter how old it gets. The good news is, if you follow the steps we have covered today, choosing the right variety, using fast-draining soil, watering carefully, and giving your tree plenty of light, you should be able to avoid most of these problems entirely. Now for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning, and this one can save you years of waiting. If you want your avocado tree to produce fruit faster, look for a tree that has already been tip grafted or that shows signs of mature wood. But here is the real trick. You can actually graft a fruiting scion onto your own tree if you have access to wood from a mature producing avocado. Here is how it works. Find someone in your area, maybe a neighbor or someone in a local gardening club, who has an avocado tree that is actively producing fruit. In late spring, take a small cutting from their tree, just a twig with a few buds about 6 inches long. Then graft that cutting onto your container tree using a simple cleft graft or whip graft. When that grafted scion takes and starts growing, it carries with it the maturity of the parent tree. Instead of waiting years for your tree to reach fruiting age on its own, that grafted branch can potentially flower and fruit within a season or two. I have seen trees produce their first avocados just 18 months after a successful graft. Even if grafting sounds intimidating, it is actually a straightforward technique once you see it done. There are plenty of tutorials available, and local gardening groups often hold grafting workshops in spring. This single trick can shave years off your wait for homegrown avocados. So that is everything you need to know about growing avocados in containers. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you do not miss future videos. And if you have any questions or want to share your own container avocado experiences, drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Growing your own avocados is one of the most rewarding things you can do as a gardener. There is nothing quite like walking out to your patio and picking a perfectly ripe avocado from your own tree. It takes a little patience and attention, but with the right variety, good soil, and careful watering, you absolutely can do this. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.